Welcome to my program, Mr. Amos Jones. The story of the son of Mr. and Mrs. Johnson is heartbreaking. The team of the Capital Show and myself, we sympathize with them. I have important question for you. I know that you are the lawyer who is handling the case, and you will be candid enough to answer all of our inquiries. So at the beginning, what is the background of the story? Tell us more about the Children National Hospital. What's happening there, and what is the issue with the Mr. and Mrs. Johnson child?
Well, what we have here is a horrible set of circumstances in which a distraught minor child with caring, loving parents in a family in the Washington, D.C. area presenting with uh, child trauma. And what we had in the parents' effort to assist their child and to love and raise their child was a bizarre response at Children's National Hospital when the child was brought for care in November of 2021
Mm,
of a total disrespect for parental consent and the parents' rights to ensure that their child remains safe. And it was so unfortunate that it went to the level where the hospital warned these parents that unless they changed their religion, which had not been a concern
mhm.
until they got to the hospital of the child or anyone else, unless and until they changed religions, the child would never go back to them. And that child was held there for about 7 weeks over December through
Mm,
December of
mm,
2021. And the
mm.
hospital then sent the child into state custody, and the child has never been returned to the parents. And it's been
Let's
two and a
discuss,
half years.
yeah, let's discuss this issue about the custody and parental rights. On what level grounds did Children's National Hospital deny this family or the parent rights to access to their child?
The hospital became preoccupied with what this whole pronoun concern. This is a child who presented as a male boy child and had indicated not having any interest at all in being anything other than a male. And then suddenly, after the hospital days, began to suggest wanting different, what they call pronouns, that is, being called a she and her instead. And
Mm,
so the hospital decided, well, this is the way we're going to go, and this is the what's needed treatment, which leads to these recognitions and perhaps sex change procedures, not necessarily surgical. So the hospital took the position that the family's beliefs, which were that the child could be helped in a way that was sensitive to even the child's own views and values,
mm,
and the child requested the family therapist they had used for a long time
mm.
who came to the hospital and was good, but the hospital disregarded that therapist to also have traditional, ordinary religious views. And this is a family that's basically a Baptist family, which is a mainstream Protestant denomination. I mean, even if it were not mainstream, parents get to raise their kids. That's the law,
Yeah, yeah.
that's the Constitution.
So,
So this is happening to parents who practice Islam, whose kids are having some uncertainties and difficulties, and parents who are devout Muslims are being targeted as well. So we filed a case at the DC Office of Human Rights alleging religious discrimination and other protected
yeah.
characteristics, including race
Mm.
and sex,
So
because
maybe.
we believe this is a result of hostility at the hospital where they were telling the parents, get with the new religion or don't get your child back.
Mhm. Are there any precedents or similar cases where parents were required to change their religious beliefs to regain custody of their children, from your knowledge, at your knowledge?
I have not found cases where the discrimination based on religious convictions was so overt in a children's hospital. We
Mm,
do have reason to believe that this must be the norm, given the way the hospital at the Office of Human Rights, where the executive branch administrative charge has been going since 2022, that they hold to that view, that it's perfectly okay. And
mm,
in fact, the child was moved in with the chaplain at the hospital who had the religious views and convictions that the hospital was trying to push onto this family back in November and December of 2021. The father and mother refused to change their religion to be that of the chaplain with whom the child now lives, which raises significant concerns about the type of care and interaction that patients who are juveniles
Yeah,
and staffers within hospitals who are there to provide care in which they engage.
yeah, let's talk about the medical and ethical concerns. Was there a formal diagnosis or evaluation conducted before the hospital determined if the child is transgender or not?
The hospital seems to have done no diligence other than to listen to I don't know what,
Mm,
because we don't know where they got the notion that a child who had expressed complete sensitivity toward his gender male,
mm,
his sex male, who even had fallen in love and wanted to marry a girl from his
mm.
track team, how they came up with this.
So,
We do know that there's a National Institutes of Health program of youth with certain medical conditions. And we know, for example, there's a strong correlation among autism and gender dysphoria.
mm.
And so we believe that the hospital has some interest in
But
holding on to these patients as commodities.
but there was no medical or physical report regarding any child condition and the decision of transition, or is it ethical or legal for the hospital to test a child? Yani if they tested, it seems they didn't test the child, and there is no medical record about sexuality or any transmitted disease, and how they have to have the parental consent. Is it right?
We have found no consent in this case at the Office of Human Rights that the parents granted. We have 3 day successive holds the hospital put to run it out to 7 weeks,
Mhm.
billing insurance a particular way. We have 900 pages of medical evidence that suggests no consent or anything along those lines. The month before the child went to the hospital, we had an autism early essentially a kind of diagnosis, referring the child to the continual testing required to confirm that hypothesis. And that all stopped. And the child was in foster care, and the foster mother, this child was in a nuclear family with a father, mother, and siblings in a house in suburban Washington, D.C., Maryland, and then was placed with a single woman in Maryland, whom we believe we found had an assault charge in 2005, who pulled the child out of the continual autism testing,
Mhm.
and then who had the child 7 months into this foster relationship. The child was sent to the hospital for a suicide attempt. So
Mm.
that foster parent was reported to Child Protective Services
Mhm.
for these derelictions and then turned up dead. The foster mother died. And after that, when the parents were cleared of any abuse whatsoever, none of the hospital alleged that parents abused the child. The state of Maryland did a major trial and found there was no abuse. It was unsubstantiated, these allegations, and that the parents were fit, but that the child should remain in the foster system. And that's when the child was turned over to the hospital chaplain in Washington,
Yeah,
D.C.
we need to know more about this case. I have three more or four questions. How did the hospital use, and let's talk about the funding and institutional practices. How they use of federal funds for the gender development program align with federal regulations and guidelines? How that it's work? Are there
We
specific
believe
guidelines?
that we believe that the federal government is very careful about making sure that methods of research and treatment on juveniles, especially, are ethical and safe. What we have seen in this matter, and one of the reasons we're at the Office of Human Rights, we believe it stems from religious discrimination and other areas of discrimination. We are standing for people of all faiths to raise their children. These
Mm,
global religions that are longstanding and quite legitimate are suddenly under attack. And we think that rush to prejudice and the rush to bias against traditional minded parents and families has
mhm,
led this hospital to a delirium that
mm,
has caused them to run afoul of the principles and regulations about how the funding is supposed to be used.
yeah,
Whether or not this particular child was directly the recipient of those types of federal dollars, or not. The systems are in place, and the hospital appears to be very committed, according to what we have found at the DC Office of Human Rights. And that's the case I'm talking about. That's been going on for since 2022. We've got to find out what they knew, when they knew it, and how they have run afoul of federal regulations over these programs. We're investigating that still. And we're looking to pursue those angles too.
This is my question. What kind of case can be made, maybe that the hospital's action constitute religious discrimination? What legal actions can be taken against the hospital and its staff for the alleged wrongful actions, if we can say?
Well, first of all, we have a wonderful local state level ordinance because it's the District of Columbia, which operates as a state and a city. It's the DC Human Rights Act of 1977. And in that act, where this is the case I'm discussing, we have religious discrimination banned in public accommodations. That means that you are not allowed legally to treat people differently because you don't like their religion. When you tell a family, if you don't change your religion, your child will never come back to you. We will take your child. If you don't change your religion, we will report you and have you up on trumped up charges for a long time with your out-of-pocket expenditure on 2 lawyers in Maryland, and we're going to tie you up and take your child. We will sex change your child. This child, we will have a doctor, as we have here, a healthcare provider, indicating that this minor boy is, quote, living as a woman. That's in the record, where a child is called a woman in these records. If anything, the boy would be a girl, not a woman. So the sexualization of these children and the use and trafficking.
Sorry to interrupt, but what are the immediate action or steps can be taken to protect and secure the safety of the child during the trial or during the legal process when it's unfolds? So how we protect?
These parents sought immediate protection by taking their child out and having their child put in a better children's hospital. They were denied. This hospital blocked those efforts. These parents then sought legal protection through the process in the state of Maryland, which did find that the allegations that the hospital made against them were unsubstantiated. These parents sought legal recourse at the DC Office of Human Rights, and then eventually other legal remedies that are going.
Yeah, my question is how Congress can be involved to investigate the hospital's actions and practices and use the use of federal funds in a wrong way. Is there any role for the Congress? Is there any step that you approached?
Congress in the United States controls the budgeting of all of these federal programs, and Congress is responsible for oversight of those programs. Congress can and may have hearings to assess the extent to which Children's National Hospital and others have overstepped and superimposed on these families unwanted and unconsented for medical procedures, psychological procedures, sociological procedures, and even legal ramifications, and cut off funding. Congress can redirect the funding. Congress can stiffen penalties for these kinds of trafficking that we allege is going on, as well as discrimination based on religion, which runs afoul of the federal Constitution if you're dealing with a state actor type hospital, and which certainly runs afoul of the 14th Amendment thereof and statutes that protect parental rights. But it also runs afoul of what are called the equities in contract, which are patient-doctor relations and the expectations that people will operate honorably, honestly, and fairly in these patient relations with parents. Here, this has not happened. This family's rights have been totally destroyed.
Yeah, which is so sad. Thank you, Mr. Amos Jones, for your information, for everything you're doing, your help to clarify the legal strategy and potential outcomes for Mr. and Mrs. Jones in their pursuit for justice and return for the child. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being on the Capital Show.
Thank you.
Hey, Maria Malouf here. Please click to like and subscribe to Maria Malouf TV YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.